tell me what really inspired you to become a guitarist, and sort of the first point you can remember where you actually heard music and you thought, I really want to play guitar now?
Sure. It was originally, the Guitar Hero games.
Yeah.
Like, this is really lame. I played Guitar Hero 3, and that was the one with like all the shred on it. It had like the Dragon Force song on it, I think, which is, again, kind of lame. I was playing that and I was like, wait a minute, why don't I just play real guitar? So I went home after playing it at friends, and then my dad's a guitarist, and he's got like an old Blazer series, like Ibanez from the 80s. It's like technically vintage now, which is really cool. I dug that out, and we had like a little Marshall amp, because I tried learning guitar I think before that, and I just had no interest in it. I sort of picked that up, and I learned Iron Man, sat in the window, and my parents were outside, and they were like, shut up, turn the window, like close the window, you know. That was sort of it. Like I was playing Guitar Hero, and I was like, why don't I just do this for real? And then since then I was just like, that's all I've really wanted to do. So that's pretty much it.
From starting guitar then, you said you started off learning like Iron Man and stuff like that. So with the material you're writing now, sort of what bands and artists were you listening to that kind of made you develop the skills to play that, and sort of what steps did you have to take to practice and sort of to be able to play the things you play?
I went through a massive metal phase, like where I was only interested in like playing metal. Like I loved Slipknot and like Lamb of God, and I think Trivium was the first gig I went to. All of that stuff where it's all like, it's like super, like most of it's alternate picked, but then because I was self-taught, I never really learnt to alternate pick properly, and so I ended up compensating and doing loads of like always down picking sort of things, or using the upstroke on a lot of things when it shouldn't really be an upstroke, which sort of it's sort of the foundation for the way I play. It's like do stuff but not properly, but all with like economy picking and just sort of being lazy almost. And the loads of the stuff I play now is like, it's just noodles that sort of come out and I turn it into something. I went through the metal phase, and then I discovered Dream Theater, and that's just a big rabbit hole you can go down of just, you have to learn every Dream Theater song. So I learned every Dream Theater song. And then so that was all like really much the shred stuff. I was really into like Paul Gilbert when I was like 17, all that stuff. I was super into that. And then after that, I went to university, where sort of all of the styles and everything sort of opened up, and I wasn't the metal kid anymore, and I started listening to like jazz fusion and things like that. And I sort of did that before, but this is way more it was way more intense when I was at uni, like Snarky Puppy and things like that. So you get like the note choices there as well, and those are sort of things that I try to incorporate into my playing. It's just sort of whatever comes out really, and then see how you can go with it, you know, and like use weird, I don't really think about it too much. It's just to see what comes out, and if I'm doing something weird in a take, like because I don't play properly, then I'll just go with that and then turn it into something. So that's sort of become something that I've worked on, as like finding weird things that I do as shortcuts and then turning them into things that aren't. Yeah. So like particularly the economy thing.
So is it sort of more like when you write and stuff, is it instead of like planning it out like theoretically, being like, I'm actually going to do this, is it just kind of like
I just noodle, man. Yeah. Like if I've got an idea or something, like a backing, then I was just going to noodle in D minor and see if there's something cool, and I usually do a bunch of takes, see what was cool with that one and whether I can link them up, or sometimes you sing it and then see what comes out. And that's genuinely how I work. Like I know where I am, like in terms of a key center and everything, but then most of it's just ear, to be honest. And then that's it really. It's just ear. That's all I really use for that sort of thing.
Yeah. Do you think it's like better to do that as like would you recommend that for other people to take that like sort of more organic route?
Yeah, for sure. Like, because I think if you're following your ear, this could sound mega hippie, Like if you're following your ear, you're following yourself. And like if you're singing something and you're playing what you're singing, that's the most pure you can be, I think. But then your ear changes depending on what you've been listening to, the amount of theory you know as well. Like whether not necessarily how much theory, but like the sounds that you hear. So if someone plays a lot in melodic minor, you're going to start thinking melodic minor, and then your phrases are going to start to sound like that particular sound. So I think that's organic, sort of a weird thing, but like, yeah, use your ear. For me, at least, use your ear. Come up with something cool and follow it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I know you come from like a theory sort of background.
Yeah. Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I kind of just do what you do, really. Like I think,
Yeah.
like a bit of mix of both. Like I like to know where I am in a song, and then possibly use theory to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Always go with what suits the song best. Like for your written stuff, do you think that's the best way to go? Like whatever suits the song best, really?
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, I listen to loads of shred music, and one of the problems I have with shred music is that often, not all the time, but there's certain things where it's just a blatant display of technical ability and it does nothing for me. And I want to hear something that's sort of, I mean, if that comes from the heart, then that's cool and that's fine, but that's something that, again, back to the organic thing, is like, I don't think many people think in sweeped arpeggios as a thing that they would sing over the top. You don't necessarily have to sing it, but you know, it's sort of like, I don't want to shoehorn things in that don't need to be there. But yeah, that's sort of how
Are there sort of any like musicians or players that have really like sort of inspired you to take that kind of route?
Yeah, for sure. Pliny, obviously, massive fan. And then players like Nick Johnson, most of the modern guys, to be honest. Like Sam Bell as well. He's like super into the techie shred stuff with his band Mask of Judas. But then he's like this wicked 80s fusion guy as well, and that's amazing. And he just follows what he's doing. And then Guthrie Govan, obviously, because he does everything from like an internal place. And I asked him what he thinks about once, and he's just like, just do it. I just hear the notes and do it. And I think that's probably the ultimate aim for a guitarist, is to just be able to do what they can hear, or any musician, I think, or what they can hear in their head, and they can just bung it out.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So some other questions about sort of like your musical like style and stuff like that.
Sure.
So one thing like I ask a lot of musicians is like obviously like you play very well and stuff like that. So how do you get to a point where you can sort of when you're out of your comfort zone, you like where you get to a point where you're like, I really need to push myself here, and sort of how do you think that musicians, do you think it's important for them to get out of their comfort zones and things like that? And how do you get yourself into a place
sure.
like
that? I think the other thing is like, if you're always, again with the organic thing, if you're always doing the organic thing and not pushing it yourself, you can end up sounding stale. So I think it's cool to just listen to stuff which isn't the stuff you're working on. Like I really like horrendous pop music. Some J-pop's great, but then I really like soundtrack stuff, and I like basically stuff which is sort of nothing like what I play, but there's still merit to it, and you can sort of incorporate that into what you're doing. Like, but perhaps you like someone's chord progression somewhere, or someone does something rhythmically, or even if it's a ridiculously catchy hook. That's usually that's something that I kind of want, is like to focus more on melody, and like it's got shred in it and things like that, but then most of the things you can sort of sing along with, not from like it's not something I've laboured over, but like sometimes it's great to just do a melody and then just repeat the melody, or it's just nice to play something that's catchy, I guess. Not really, it depends.
If it works for the piece, then it like
for sure. If it's and you can do cool stuff behind it and reinvent it later on or whatever. But yeah, I can't remember what the question was.
That's good. So talk about your EP. So Lighthouse.
Yeah.
So first of all, talking about the sort of the origin of it, and when did you decide to be like, I want to write an EP now, and
sure.
Sort of how would you say your creative process was for that at the beginning, and how did it change throughout?
The creative process was almost non-existent as the beginning. This is sort of the first stuff that I've ever seen to completion. I didn't really have any bands. I mean, I played in bands and things, but not to the same level of seriousness, or like they were commercial, function projects. And this is like really sort of fairly intensely composed things. But originally it started off as this thing. It was just that over and over again. And the original version of it had this like a fade out on it with the waves in the sea, sort of like at the end. And then I had that, and that's why it was called Lighthouse, is because it has all that stuff. And then that sort of evolved into extra stuff, and then basically the whole of the track was based around this chord. So that's obviously at the beginning, and it's there it is again. And then around the same time I had this progression as well. That's that Megalidian. And I was using that, and then I honestly just sort of, a lot of the EP was me like finding my ear as well, because I worked on it over a period of about 4 years. So I taught myself how to use Pro Tools, and I taught myself how I work best and how I track best, and then taught myself how to use how to get nice recorded tones sort of out of the box, because I'm using a Kemper. And it took ages, and it sort of changed enormously over the period of time. Like complete sections were redone because I wasn't happy with them at a later date. And it just I kept sort of going, and then ended up with what I have now, and then released it. But the idea with all of it was that I try and focus around a particular chord shape. So the first track, obviously Lighthouse, is this shape, and the second one, Traveller, is based around this, but like that sort of harmony that you get out of that. And then the third track is a mix between sort of this and, because they work really nicely together. It's just pretty chords. Yeah, that's
like very like Ted Green sort of, I guess.
Yeah, and then sort of the way you can fill in the rest of the notes while you're trying to compose. It's just to tap them, and then that becomes part of the part. And then, I think that's this sort of stuff. It's the things you do to try and add things, and then they just end up becoming the thing. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. So like. That sort of thing. And then obviously adding with the thumb and things, and in Lighthouse particularly, there's I originally wrote it where I was going to add in the part later, but the main bit for like the math rocky section, I'm just sort of adding it in because I didn't have a bass available.
Are you tapping that before you hit it, or are you picking it and then I top it?
It starts off with a pick, and then the pick stays in the top strings. So I'm just filling in the extra space. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, it's like a really like random thing to do. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's sort of like Andy McKee sort of things where he'll just fill in extra stuff.
Yeah.
But it's sort of super weird. Again, that's another shortcut that's just ended up as a thing. So that's the technique sort of isn't thought about, and then you have to work it out afterwards, and then you're like, oh, great.
I always find like stuff like that is like it's so much more difficult to actually like to reproduce it when you're thinking of it, because you're actually doing it manually, like, or automatically. You're just like, oh, that's just doing it. When you're like, what am I actually doing and why?
Yeah,
you break it down and you're like, oh, that's actually really complicated to actually think about it and do it.
Yeah, like I don't think about my left hand, my right hand at all. The right hand just does the thing, and then left hand's just filling it. Fills it in.
So you were saying about like when you were recording the EP, like the ways you work best and stuff like that. So what have you found to go through that?
Sure.
How you work
alone in a room by myself with Pro Tools and no one else around, and then at a later date sort of getting other people involved. But mostly it's getting an idea out, and then the first thing for me is if I've got an idea for a bass line, if there's an immediate idea for something like an additional part, then I'll track it at the same time. But I've started using a Launchpad, and it's great for programming drums. So the first thing I do after I've got an idea is to program drums along with it, even if it's super basic, just to get the feel and the time down. So start off with like snare and bass drum, and then whatever you can fill it in later, and then usually there's room for melody over the top or a supporting guitar part, and then sort of just evolving it from there, and then playing it through as well is also really handy, and then getting to the part where you haven't got anything written, and then just keep going and see what comes out, or whether the feel needs to change, or whether you feel like you get to the end of that section, you're like, oh yeah, wait, that could do with some piano or something, and then you sort of work. That's generally how I work, is alone and in a box. But it's sort of rewarding as well, because I wrote everything, and then Yanir and Alex sort of redid my parts, but better, because Alex Van Blare from Signals, or used to be in Signals, is amazing. He's like one of the best musicians I know, and he just comes up with stuff. He's like, oh yeah, you could do it like that, but you could do it like this, and it's better. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. And then Yanir obviously is incredible at drums, so he takes my program parts, which are often really badly programmed as well, and he's like, oh, you mean like this, and he does it better, and you go, okay, yeah. So that's why I've got those two involved. But in terms of structure and how I want everything to go, that's all me.
Okay.
And that's why it's released under my name and not as a band, because I wrote everything. Okay.
So working alone, like on your own and stuff like that, like I work on my own sometimes with other bands. And how do you ever get to a point where you sometimes think, is this no offense to you, but do you ever get stuck in your own head sometimes and then have to go away and come back to an idea?
As in, is it too self-indulgent?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think you can spend hours just looping a certain part and being like, just noodling over the top, or trying to find the part. And I think the best way of doing that is just take a break, or work on something else, or listen to something that you don't normally listen to, or play a video game, or go for a walk. Just refresh the brain, and then if it still isn't there, just leave it and then come back to it later, I think.
That makes sense, because like you can just overthink things sometimes, can't you?
Yeah, for sure. And you're like, oh, why isn't this, maybe it needs this, or maybe it needs this, and then you can take a break, you come back to it a few days later, and you just like, oh yeah, it's that. And you just play because
sometimes the most like obvious idea is sometimes the most simplest idea.
Yeah, for sure. Or it's the first idea you had, and it's like buried in a number of takes, and you're like, oh no, wait, actually that was one. Yeah, for sure. But,
okay.
I think people are really different, so don't take it as gospel.
So take us through some other sections of Lighthouse. Like
sure.
I like the part, like one of my favorite parts is that it's like it's like near the end of it. There's like a pattern with like violins, like
yeah.
That's really cool.
Oh man. It was originally written on a piano, and then in the MIDI editor, I just wanted some like dramatic sounding sort of stuff, and then that was all. It's because it's all just, there's no sort of a rhythmic variation in there. It's all da 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 da. Oh, except that it's all quite linear sort of things. I literally just programmed it all in. And that's generally how I work. But then the Launchpad's super handy now. Since I got that, because it lays it out in fourths, which is like a guitar, and so you can sort of move your way around that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's so piano in particular. I'm not a very good piano player, but I know all my shapes, and it's the same shape, and so it saves a lot of time. Like the workflow's decreased, got faster. Yeah, the workflow's got faster.
Quicker results.
Yeah. You should definitely go Launchpad.
Yeah, I definitely want to. I've been using the app on my phone for it.
Yeah.
So just because it's just easier really of using that. It's pretty cool.
But it's super useful for programming parts if you're a guitarist.
Yeah.
Because obviously it lays it out.
Yeah, for like keys and stuff and synths, it's just great because you just push one.
Yeah, and then if you already think in guitar, then it's perfect for guitarists.
Yeah. So with that track, how would you say it developed from beginning to end, and sort of how do you feel about that track now that that one's finished, and when you got to the end of it, did it turn out completely different to what you wanted in?
Yeah, completely. The track originally ended with this, well, it faded out, and I honestly got stuck with trying to shoehorn that in, and I spent the ages by myself trying to get it how I wanted it, and it just wouldn't come out how I wanted it, and I couldn't link, because the beginning is in a different tempo as well, and then it shifts to a polyrhythm when it swaps into the math rock pick. So yeah, I just got tired of trying to shoehorn it in, so it just became, and it stopped. So I just put some stabs in, and then that was it. And I'm really happy with how it came out, because it's sort of like super punchy, but yeah, it's completely different. And then the second track in particular is completely different. I sort of had this mass, like in the drop down section where it sort of goes, you get all the nice chords. That was all originally like way heavier, and then had loads of other parts going over the top, like really weird, like sort of Steve Vai-esque things, where he did like on the Flexible album, where it's just sort of nonsense, but it's cool. So I reined that in and I turned it into something a bit nicer. You get the nice chords out.
Let's talk about that one. Let's talk about Traveller. So
sure.
How did that come about? What was like the point what was like the first riff you wrote for that? And sort of what did you want for it in comparison to what the whole song turned out to be?
Sure. I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted for Traveller. I just had this chord progression that I wrote in a room somewhere, and I recorded it on an old iPhone, but it was that sort of thing, and then that evolved into other things. But I did know that at one point I wanted to invert to take a different bass route while the guitar did the same thing, so you can repurpose the riff, and I repurposed it at the end. But honestly, that track was just one idea and then another idea, and then you sort of keep going and you flow into something else, and you're like, oh no, it's got a fast bit now, or and then from a technical point of view, I had this idea for like going up but moving sort of diagonally as you go up, so in the middle bit sort of it moves up, but it sort of goes in and out, like it sort of goes down and stuff. And that was the only thing that I really wanted to get in, and I did. So that's in there now. I just thought it was cool that you sort of go up and then constantly sliding back down. It's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like a lot of like sort of like Tosin's like double picking.
Yeah, sort of thing. It's all one. There's no like double pick there.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So what type of fundamentals and stuff did you have to develop to kind of like play that kind of way?
That's all doing the economy thing, well, not all doing, but it's there's like 2 down strokes and then an up, just because it's efficiency of motions. It's honestly not thinking about it, and then that's how it comes out, and then you've got to work out how to play it. Oh, he loves you. So that is, it's sort of like a Dream Theater-esque riff, and then played badly, or wrongly, but with sort of different approach to it. So it's mostly just listening to shred stuff and not being able to do the alternate picking thing as well as people like Dan Thornton, who I managed to get a guest solo on my album, which is amazing. But he's an absolute shred lord. The dog's going. Oh man, the door's shut.
So what was it like working with Dan Thornton. How did you contact him and stuff?
Dan, I used to sit next to Dan at uni. We both went to BIM in Brighton, and we both did a module called Solo Performance, and that's how I met him. And he played an 8-string, and he'd sit there and he'd be like, he shreds. And he's one of the nicest guys as well. He's super into guitar, and he's in some amazing bands. Like, he's got a really good metal band called No Sin Evades His Gaze, and they're like it's just what I want out of a modern metal band, and that's great. But yeah, honestly, I just used to sit next to Dan, and I always thought he was a great player, like a really good player. So I just wanted to get him on board because he's going to do great things. Like, I really hope he does great things. Yeah, so. And I used to take the piss out of him because he plays an 8-string. But the irony was that I had a 7-string at the same time. I was just like, but he had one extra string, so obviously.
Just like call him a chump and bully him and stuff.
Yeah, you know, what a chump, you know?
Yeah, 8 strings, all losers.
Yeah, you must have a tiny penis.
So, like, what other reasons made you like pick him instead of like other musicians? What do you think? How would you sort of like describe what he brought to the track creatively and stuff? And how do you think it benefited the song?
So I gave him a section when I sort of thought about this stuff. I always knew I wanted Dan on board, so I sort of wrote this section where it's got some weird modulation in it, but it's got room for him to sort of breathe a bit, and he does the shreddy thing, but he can also do like this really cool Andy Timmons thing, which he never shows anyone, and he should. And he does that sort of thing as well, and so I wanted to give him something with quite a lot of like chord information that he can sort of have fun with. And so I honestly just left that whole section for his solo and then sent it off and let him do his thing, and now I'm probably gonna have to play it live, and I don't want to.
Can you talk about sort of like the chords that you like?
Yeah, sure. Section? So in that section it gets a bit like heavier. So there's loads of chord movement in there which you can follow, and you can hit some really sweet notes as you follow it, but then there's room to just, you know, shred it out as well, and lock in with. And I think that's really cool in music, when particularly in instrumental music, when it's not just a guy playing over a backing track and, you know, he follows what the music's doing, or the music follows what they're doing. And that's something that's super important to me when I'm writing, and I want to get that in my music, not from a place of like feeling like it should be, but just because that's honestly how I want to write, and so I do write like that. And I just love it when people line up and they do some weird thing, but the whole band does the weird thing, and it's like someone's really thought about that, and yeah, that's great. But then improvisation is great as well. So
yeah, it's just like, I guess like for you, then it's kind of like more like about maybe like layers, instead of just like, oh, these are just chords you can shred over. It's more about actually like synchronicity between like guitar, bass, drums.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a big layer that actually works like melodically and creatively. For
sure. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I love it when you can listen to a piece of music and you can pick out different things that are going on. Like maybe the instruments are doing like a similar thing, they lock in for certain things, but then they do their own thing, and then you never noticed that they used to do that in that section, and then they turn that into something new. I love that in music. So, is
there any type of like bands or anything that like sort of make you, that have led you that way, or like things like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing his name right, but there's a guy called David Midzik. I have no idea. He's from like Eastern Europe, but his music is just insane. Like it is one of the, like, his Below 3 album is one of the albums which like completely changed my perspective on music. And yeah, it's so layered, it's so thoughtful, it's so good. You know, it's perfect. It's honestly one of my top 10 albums, and yeah, that's something that has always sort of informed my playing and my my style.
So that's always like the best kind of music, when you can listen to it again and you're like, oh, I didn't realise that, and then you go off, and that just helps like your own development as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like or you get slightly better at a certain form of production or something, and you can, oh yeah, he's done that, and then you would have never realised that. He's amazing. So yeah, he's amazing.
In terms of like production and stuff, for like, I've go over like both of these songs. Like, how did you develop like production skills and stuff like that? Where did you turn to?
So I have a rough idea of mixing, but my friend Rob mixed all of it, because he's just got a way better ear. And you know, if you're doing stuff, then you just got to use people who are better than you for the things that you're not as good at, and that, you know, are important. So I turn to him for all that stuff. But in terms of like tracking and using Pro Tools and everything, and editing everything, that's all me. I sort of learnt all those things, and I can hear things in other people's music and replicate them roughly in Pro Tools, certain production things, or I know the sound and I want that, and I can tell Rob to do it, much to his dislike. Yeah, I want it like this. No, great. But yeah, he's I basically didn't know how to use Pro Tools before I started recording. And then this is why it took so long as well. Like, it just took forever, because I was teaching myself Pro Tools.
How would you sort of say that's like an important skill now for like a lot of musicians out there? What would you say like is a good way to get yourself started on that kind of stuff?
Buy a copy of Logic and not Pro Tools, because the Pro Tools learning curve is like a cliff. But yeah, just get some recording software and just try to just make stuff, you know, and emulate things that you think are cool if you want to incorporate them into your own thing. But then it's always going to end up sounding like you. It's not going to be a direct copy and paste of what they did, because you're going to write. And so yeah, I think that's the way that people should learn, is just by doing. Yeah, particularly guitar.
Yeah, I guess it's also a thing to bear in mind, like just because you've got the software, like, it won't always sound exactly like what you hear.
Yeah, for sure.
The work still.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not totally into that sort of thing, which is why I prefer for Rob to mix it, because he's got a better ear for it.
How important do you think it is to have someone outside of like your creative circle to kind of come in and be like, give you feedback and stuff like that? Like you said, like working with Alex and working with your drummer Yanir, how do you think it's important to listen to them as well? And did you do much of that on
yeah, I mean, I sent off my demos to quite a few friends, and they listened to multiple versions of them before, and they probably got incredibly sick of them. And my parents, thanks for listening. Yeah, all the different versions. Like, oh, what do you think of this? And it's like, it sounds the same as last time, but you know, the snare's more present or something. Yeah, so it's enormously important, but it should inform you and not guide you, like, and not, it's very faux deep. Like it should inform your opinion about what you're doing, and you know, give you things to work on. But I don't think you should ever follow someone else's advice and take it to heart, and because they're them and you're you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, your creative thing is your creative thing, you know. So I think that, yeah, enormously important, but don't listen to them. But listen to them.
Yeah, like, take it on board, but don't let someone try and shape your voice.
Yeah, for sure. That's a way better way of putting it. Yeah.
Let's talk about Lunar Wave and how that came about.
Sure.
Talk about the origin and how that's changed.
I honestly have no recollection of how it started, but it's all based around these two chords, and I'm roughly in tune. It's fine. And then just I sort of messed around with doing some stuff around the 12th fret a lot in the E minor, which obviously works great. That sort of thing. And then that was just noodling around, and then just sort of adding in the extra stuff like the bass note. Oh, where would the bass note go? Helps if I play the right notes. And then I had a chord progression as well, which is the same one that's on the thing, but then I wanted to keep the tapping going, so it was
like, are you thinking of it like a piano player and stuff like that, because you're just like using one guitar to start with to do it all? Like, are you thinking about every individual note and how they fit with other in terms of its sound, not like in theory, but in terms of its sound?
Generally, a lot of it's trial and error, because sometimes your hands will chuck out something that your brain hasn't thought of. But I knew I wanted to get sort of like quite, I don't know what the term, like spacey, not spacey, I don't know what you call it. But you got like some notes which, like, you got the six in there, which obviously gives it a bit more flavour. But yeah, I honestly don't think if there's a note I want to hear or a particular chord sound, it's mostly dealing in sounds. So as opposed to thinking, you know, I want to go to like a six there, it's mostly I just want something that's got, you know, like a Dorian flavour sort of thing, even though that's not Dorian. But, yeah, so it's sort of incorporating those things, and then getting a big spacey sound. So you go take that or adding that in. Just about following the track more than anything, or where I feel like it should go, like closer or further away in terms of voicings.
So what other parts of the song, like, let's go through, so what comes after that, really?
There's the horrible tapping thing that I probably won't get right. Oh, that's how it started. Yeah, so I had that first, and then all of the other things are just honestly just sitting down, being bored, and then just following where you reckon the note should go.
Did you with those like patterns, do you think of it like a drummer, like laying out like a kick and snare type of idea, like a rudiment kind of thing?
Not really. It's more just layering another note after another note in that case, I think. Yeah, that's a really good question. It's just following.
So when you got to the end of that song, since like you'd had the other two, did you know that was like, I've got these 3 songs now and that's the EP, or were there any songs that you cut or anything like that?
There's the motif thing as well, which ties all of the tracks together.
Oh, okay.
And I sort of knew that I wanted to do 3 tracks. So I had these 3 tracks and I really focused on them. And then I sort of had these ideas, like they're just nice melodies, like the one from Lighthouse was. And then I'd sort of, you get to a section and you're just like, oh, I'll just try it out over that, and it works really well over that, and you're like, oh, okay, so that's going to stay, and then that sort of ties the whole project together, like the recurring motif thing. So I used that a fair amount. But then there was another track which I had like a short demo for, which I've literally just recorded drums for at the ranch in Southampton, and I wrote that sort of quite a long time after I wrote the rest of them, but it's sort of from that era of stuff,
okay.
But like with my current mindset, because I wrote all of it in the last couple of months, so I'm really excited about putting that out. It should be really good.
Do you want to talk about the ranch at all? Or?
Yeah, the ranch was amazing. Neil is the best. He gets a great drum sound, and he deserves your money. Yeah, you've done some recording in the ranch.
Yeah, it's a very easy place to record.
For sure.
Everything just sounds great, and it's just surprisingly, like, because I've never worked in a studio before. I've more or less done it at home or done it myself at uni.
Yeah.
So working with people at the ranch, like I work with Dom, and just everyone I've pretty much been there has just had really great experiences.
Yeah,
it sounds phenomenal, really.
Yeah, like the thing I noticed was they just do it really quick.
Yeah.
And the things that I thought took ages didn't.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wait, oh yeah, this is why you pay these guys money, because they're super quick. They've got a really good ear for it, and they just get a great drum sound. So
yeah,
I mean, I only used it for drum tracking because I do everything else at home. But yeah, they're good.
So did Neil like give you any like creative feedback or anything like that, or was it just straight up just record drums?
It was just straight up record drums. He's got a really good ear for when someone needs to do something again. Like he'll listen to certain hits that maybe you're not as aware of, or at least I'm not as aware of, and he'll just be like, oh, I need to do that again because this wasn't as good. And oh yeah. But yeah, he did. I already had the stuff written, and I'd worked extensively with Yanni to make sure everything was like roughly right. And then, to be honest, we just tracked, and this one was a bit more hands off than the previous one. This was all like a sort of, there was no pressure to make it an EP and tie it together. It was just what it is. And so my voice cracked, that's good. And then there was no pressure to tie it in, and so it was good to get him to just have fun with it, and he can just track whatever he wants generally, sort of, but do variations on things, and we can get different ideas down and just have some fun with it, as opposed to it being like a super serious project thing and having to mastermind it, which I'll probably end up doing next time.
How did that compare then to going to the ranch and stuff? Is that like a process and position you'd want to try and record like your stuff in?
For sure. I think from now on everything will be recorded at the ranch, except for all drums. Mm-hmm. But then maybe like acoustic guitars and things which rely on a room sound, because I can just do the Kemper stuff at home with a nice cup of tea in my pants, It's,
because it's all about, it's like time and money then, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm a cheap bastard. So just do it at home. But then I might record some live playthrough things there. I'm definitely planning on doing that because they've got a really nice live room. So I'm definitely going to do it. Awesome. I don't know what yet. Maybe some acoustic versions of some of the tracks.
That'd be rad.
Yeah, I think it'd be quite cool.
I'd love to see that. So, if you talk about your creative mindset from beginning to end, how would you describe yourself as a musician now, and sort of where are you headed creatively now, and sort of looking back on that process? If you could go back in time and tell yourself, with everything you know about the EP, what would you say to yourself? What advice would you give to yourself?
Stop worrying about whether the E string is perfectly in tune. That one was the big one. It was just one bit, and it's all the ear fatigue thing sets in, and it's all you can hear is the dissonance between, and whatever, it's all I can hear over the top is just that all the time. Luckily it's sort of gone away now because it's been enough time, but just don't take it so, because it was the first thing I ever did, and I wanted to take it super seriously and make sure everything was perfect, but you can end up going too far, which is also just let go. But then if I hadn't done that, then I wouldn't be in the position I am now where I know that, so no regrets, I guess.
Yeah, because if you go back and change things, like once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
Is that like a mentality like you apply to it and stuff like that?
Yeah, sort of knowing when to stop with takes, I think, is actually quite a good one. And you can work on things too much and then it doesn't sound as good as the first take you did. Just because the first take had more vibe, a bit more character and sounded better, So that's sort of what I aim for now, is particularly when demoing as well, it's just let it go, stop restricting yourself with this idea that you have to do a certain thing, and then just let it come out, and then what it is what it is, and whether that ties in or not is up to you at a later date, but at least put the idea down first. So that's the main thing that I've sort of grown.
Okay, and just finally, what's coming out in the future? What can we look forward to?
So there's a new single coming out that's going to be called Grow. It's got some that sort of thing, and it's a bit heavier than the stuff before as well, and the drums on it are a bit more mad, and everything's just sort of how I wish the Lighthouse thing. Well, not I don't want to change anything, but potentially how it could have been if it was done now, because it's from one of those previous ideas.
Yeah, I guess it's just moving on to the next part, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Then I've got some plans to release like an acoustic sort of thing. That is sort of a plan, like an acoustic version of Lighthouse, where I incorporate some of the other themes of Lighthouse into one thing. Dog's making noise. So I'm planning on doing that. And then another EP. I've already sort of been working on another EP. And then hopefully do some live stuff and do some shows, which will be really cool. I'm really up for that.
Awesome.
Just go and wank it out in front of a room full of people.
I'm sure you know.
Yeah, you know, just
maybe guitar.
Nice voicing. Yeah, that's sort of the plan at least. I've got a rough plan for the next 2 years, but I probably won't share it just in case it never happens. And I look back on this and I go, you gave up on your dreams, man.
You used to be cool.
Yeah, you used to be cool.
That's what I knew, man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the general plan.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time.
No worries.
Cheers.
I'll give you one of these.
Thank you.